Welcome to this explainer. Let's just dive right in, shall we? If you've been keeping an eye on the job market lately, you might feel like you're playing a chaotic, high-stakes game of musical chairs. Except, half the chairs are suddenly being operated by robots. Between artificial intelligence, automation, and this massive green transition, the ground beneath our feet is shifting. The rules of work are literally being rewritten in real time. But don't sweat it, because today, our goal is to map out exactly what employers are looking for right now. We're going to decode the data so you can entirely future-proof your career. Here's a quick look at our roadmap. We're covering the Great Skills Reset, 2026 Hiring Realities, the AI Imperative, Top Skills in Demand, and finally, Proving Your Skills. By the end of this explainer, you'll have the exact blueprint to thrive in the future of work. All right, Section 1, the Great Skills Reset and Understanding the Global Macro Shift. Let's start by wrapping our heads around the massive global shifts happening right now, pulling directly from the World Economic Forum's latest Future of Jobs report. To really grasp the sheer scale of the disruption we're facing, just look at this number: 59 out of 100. If the world's workforce was made up of exactly 100 people, 59 of them are going to need some form of training or reskilling by 2030. Seriously, just look around your office or your classroom. Statistically speaking, more than half the people you're looking at will need to completely upgrade their skill sets by the end of the decade just to stay employable. We aren't talking about, a minor software update here. This is a fundamental retraining of the global population just to keep pace with innovation. We're basically living in a massive catch-22 right now. Between 2025 and 2030, foundational changes in the global economy are expected to impact nearly a quarter of all jobs. Exactly 22% of today's roles will either completely vanish or be entirely revised. But hey, before you panic, here's the flip side of that coin. A projected 170 million entirely new jobs are going to be popping up all over the world to offset those losses. The jobs aren't just vanishing into thin air, they're just changing shape. So where exactly is the market moving? Well, when you juxtapose the fastest growing jobs right up against the fastest declining ones, the narrative is crystal clear. Employers are aggressively moving away from routine tasks, basic math, and simple reading rules. Instead, the explosive growth is entirely concentrated in areas like big data, fintech AI and machine learning, and green energy transition roles. Think autonomous vehicle specialists. Basically, if a computer can do a routine task, that job is declining. But if a role requires complex, human oversight of that computer, like managing autonomous fleets or directing massive data strategies, it is growing exponentially. Moving right along to Section 2, 2026 Hiring Realities, where we ground this theory in present-day data. Now, it's one thing to look at global projections for 2030, but let's ground this theory in what's happening right now, looking at the National Association of Colleges and Employers, or NACE, Spring Update. The absolutely crucial point here is that despite all this massive macro disruption, the immediate outlook is actually surprisingly optimistic. Employer hiring for the class of 2026 is projected to increase by 5.6%. Over a third of the employers they surveyed are planning to bring in additional new hires this year, so the jobs are absolutely there for early talent. But, and this is a big but, while hiring is up overall, that growth is highly uneven. If you're looking for work in information, engineering services, wholesale trade, or construction, you're stepping into a booming market. But if you're looking at utilities or traditional manufacturing, like computers, food and beverage, or chemicals, hiring is actually decreasing. It's really a localized boom. The big takeaway here, your success isn't just about the skills you have, it's about aiming those skills at the right industry. Which brings us to Section 3, the AI Imperative, and how artificial intelligence is reshaping work. Look, we literally cannot talk about the future of work without talking about the single most impactful driver of change in the labor market today. Global investment in artificial intelligence has increased 8 times over since late 2022. 8 times! Just imagine your company's budget for software suddenly multiplying by 8 overnight. It's staggering. And this has driven a massive, truly unprecedented surge in demand for generative AI skills from both businesses and individual workers. And hey, if you think AI is just for high-level tech executives, think again. AI is absolutely no longer a niche requirement. According to the NACE data, 10.5% of all entry-level job posts now explicitly require AI skills. So this isn't just about preparing for the future. This is about getting your foot in the door today. There's actually a super fascinating disconnect happening right now. Globally, individual learners are taking courses on the heavy theoretical stuff, prompt engineering, the structural design of AI, high-level strategic decision-making. But your future boss? They probably don't want you philosophizing about the theoretical limits of Skynet. They just want you to use AI to automate their Tuesday afternoon Excel spreadsheets. Companies are sponsoring training that is highly practical. They essentially just want you to use AI to boost productivity and automate boring, routine daily tasks. They want workplace-ready applications, for sure, not just theory. Okay, let's take a quick breath. We've covered the massive macro shifts, the current hiring bumps, and the whole AI explosion. But what does this all actually mean for you today when you sit down at your laptop to write your resume? With all these millions of jobs transforming in real time, what exact skills do you need to get hired? That leads perfectly into Section 4, top skills in demand, or the competencies employers actually want. Let's break down the exact micro-level competencies employers are hunting for, using some great insights from City University of Seattle and the WEF. First up, the hard technical skills. Technology-related roles are growing massively in percentage terms. The heavy hitters here are big data, cybersecurity, business analytics, digital marketing, and machine learning. And listen, even if you aren't aiming for a traditional tech company, these still matter. A hospital needs cybersecurity for patient files, right? An agriculture firm needs data analysis for crop yields. Tech skills are no longer siloed in Silicon Valley. They are universally applied. But here's the twist. Let's anchor this narrative back in humanity for a second. In a world completely obsessed with artificial intelligence, your greatest competitive advantage is actually your human intelligence. A machine can write code, sure, but it cannot inspire a demotivated team. CityU notes that 60% of employers value soft skills even more today than they did just 5 years ago. Emotional intelligence, transformational leadership, adaptability, active listening, and collaboration. These are the skills a machine simply cannot replicate. And that brings us to your ultimate career safety net, analytical thinking. According to the World Economic Forum, 7 out of 10 companies consider this skill absolutely essential. It's the #1 most sought-after core skill out there. The ability to look at an incredibly complicated problem from multiple different angles and come up with a logical, reasoned solution, that is something no algorithm can fully replace. All right, our final section, Section 5, proving your skills and navigating the application process. Because knowing what skills to have is only half the battle, right? Now, how do you take this knowledge, navigate the application process, and actually land the job? Well, the days of just waving a fancy university degree and automatically getting a corner office are fading fast. Today, almost 70% of employers rely on skills-based hiring. This means they care far less about your traditional metrics and pedigree and far more about you actively proving you have the specific competencies required for the role. So how do you actually prove it? Well, here is a pretty brilliant 3-step blueprint based on what employers actually want to see. Step 1, get experiential learning. Nearly all employers value US-based internships and over 3/4 highly value co-ops. Step 2, explicitly tie your coursework and extracurriculars to professional skills on your resume. Don't leave them guessing. And step 3, which is honestly the most important, when you get to the interview, be prepared to share highly specific examples and situations where you used your skills to solve real problems. Don't just list a skill like data analysis. Tell the recruiter the exact story of how you use data to solve a massive problem during your internship. So, pulling this all together, this central idea perfectly summarizes everything we've covered today. Yes, you absolutely must adapt to AI. And yes, for sure, you need to understand data. But technology is ultimately just a tool. Your human adaptability, your emotional intelligence, and your capacity for leadership, those are your ultimate safety nets in a really unpredictable world. Which really just leaves us with one final thought. The job market is shifting, the chairs are moving, and millions of roles are transforming. But you have the blueprint now. You know the exact technical skills and the human competencies that are going to define the class of 2026 and beyond. So the only question left is, are you ready to embrace the great skills reset before the music stops? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you in the next one.